Crickle Man. All right, welcome back to 8.3. Here we're going to start looking at solving percent problems so that we can find the part, the percent, or the whole. In this lesson, you are going to focus on solving percent problems using a proportion and identifying the part, percent, and the whole of a given problem. So recently, we've just been learning about what percents are, how we can identify a percent and its other representations, ratios out of 100, models on a 10 by 10 grid, decimals, and how I could take like a regular fraction and turn it into a decimal, and then a percent. Today, we're going to kind of focus on just percent problems in general. So in this corner, you're going to see a percent proportion. This is what a percent proportion is usually set up as. We always have the part over the whole. Okay, this is like the original ratio of whatever we're trying to figure out the percent of. And that's going to equal whatever the percent is over 100, because percent is out of 100. When we look at these word problems or these problems in the future, they're going to be missing one of these four parts. And we need to know, well, not one of these four, it's really one of these three parts. We're either going to be missing the part in the original ratio, we're going to be missing whatever the total is in the original ratio, or we're going to be missing the percent. The 100 is always going to stay there. It's always going to be the same. When you read a problem, and you identify which piece is missing, you can fill in this proportion and then solve for that missing piece. Okay, so we're going to start super basic. We're just going to look at basic percent problems, and we're going to try to identify what in the problem is the part, the percent, and the whole. We're going to make a proportion and then find the answer to this problem. Now, over here is a sentence that can help you identify in both word problems or even in problems like these statements here, what number you're looking at is the part, the percent, or the whole. So it says part is percent of whole. So these two words are very important because they help you identify if it's a part or a whole. So the part is almost always in front of a word like is. And the whole number is almost always after a word like of. The percent is just going to be said there. It's going to say percent, or it's going to show a percent sign. Okay, let me show you some examples because I know that that's kind of a lot of talk without context. So here's our first problem. We have 8 is what percent of 20? Well, I know that percent is the number that's missing because it says what percent. So we do not know what the percent is. Now we have to identify, is the 8 a part or a whole? Now the word that's going to give me this clue is this word is. Okay. You may think that you can rely on the fact that 8 is smaller than 20 to mean that 8 is your part, but remember, you can have, 15 out of 8. It just means it's over 100%. So we can't rely on the fact that it's smaller, but we can rely on is this word is. It can kind of point me in the direction that 8 is a part. So 8 is my part in my problem. So again, if you're thinking of, I've got some sort of ratio here, like 4/5, and I'm trying to turn that into a percentage out of 100. 4 is our part of that original ratio. 5 would be our whole number of what we're trying to compare. And then over here in this missing piece will be what our percent is over 100. So that's kind of what we're identifying here. So in this problem, 8 is our part. Our percent is missing. That's what they want us to find, which means that the whole is 20. Now, another way I know that's the whole is because of that word of right there, because when it says of, it's usually meaning like out of. And so that leads us to believe that is our whole number. So with this information, I can now set up that proportion, the one that you see over here. I'm going to put my part over my whole, and then if there's a percent, it goes on top of 100, always 100. So in this case, my part is 8, my whole is 20, and I don't know my percent, so that's the piece I'm going to try to find. Now that I've set this up, I can use my multiplication skills, my scale factors, to make an equivalent ratio and find that missing piece. Now, I could also use any of those other skills that we learned in our last video. We'll do it on the other side here. So remember, we learned how to find it, the answer using a proportion, which is what we're doing now. We learned how to find our percent using a tape diagram. And we learned how to find our percent by dividing and then multiplying by 100. So I could divide 8 by 20 and times 100, but because 20 goes into 10 or 100 so evenly, I'm just going to do the proportion. So 20 times 5 is 100. So 8 times 5 is going to be my answer here, which is 40. So my answer is 40%. Okay, let's do another one. So over here we've got 10 is 40% of what? So again, the easiest one I think to identify is that percentage because it's going to say the word percent or have that percent sign. So I know that the percent in this problem is 40. 10 is going to be my part because it is that first thing before is. And then the thing I'm missing is my whole because it says of what. So my part is 10, and then I don't know what my whole number is. So again, I'm going to set up my proportion. My part is 10. I don't know what my whole number is. My percent is 40, and it's always over 100. So again, I'm going to say, okay, 10 times what makes 40? And I'm going to times that by 4. I'm going to do the same thing here. What times 4 makes 100? Or 100 divided by 4 is what? That answer is 25, which means my answer is 25. Let me fix this. So that means my answer is 25. 25. Okay, now in our next problem, same thing. This one says what is, so that's going to be our, oops, wrong color, our part. Okay. What is 20% of 50? So again, I know my percent because it has a percent sign or it says the word percent. And then 50 is going to be my whole because it's of 50. Okay, so my part we're missing. My percent is 20 and 50 is my whole. So I'm going to plug it into my proportion. My part, I don't know. My total is, or my whole is 50 and my percent is 20 out of 100. Same thing, I'm going to multiply by 2 to turn 50 into 100. So what times 2 makes 20? Or 20 divided by 2 is what? That's going to be 10. So my part is 10. So this is 25 is my whole, and 10 is my part, and 40 is my percent. Okay. We're going to practice this again. You've got some practice questions here. You guys can pause, go ahead and do these 3. If you have your notebook, you can just pause and do all of these 9 questions, and then you can come back to the video and see if you got them right or not. But your idea is to think, am I missing the part, the percent, or whole? Set it up as a proportion, and then solve in any way that you think is worth it or any way that is easiest. We are set up to solve as a proportion. However, if dividing and timesing by 100 is easier for you, then do that. Okay, so put this on the screen. If you want to pause here, you can solve these 3, or if you have your notebook, you can solve all 9. All right, see you in a minute. All right, so if you look at these first 3 problems, you will see that we are missing the whole. So I can see the word is, so that means that 8 is my part, 8 is. We already know that this is our percent because it has a percent sign, which means the thing we're missing is our whole. So I set up a proportion here with the whole missing. I did some division to figure out what my scale factor is and found that my answer will be 40. 8 is 20% of 40. In my next one, I am missing a part. What is means that I don't know what that is. So it's the part that's missing. I have a percent and I know of what. That's my whole. So I set up my proportion. I know 50 times 2 is 100. So I did some division to figure out what times 2 is 38, and the answer is 19. 19 is 38% of 50. On the next one, we're missing the whole again because of that word of what. This would be our part and our percent. Set that up, times by 5, and got 20. 40% of 20 is 8. Okay. All right. The next problems that I want you to work on are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Go ahead and pause here if you're working off the video. If you've already done these problems, I will have solved them shortly. Okay, here are the answers to these next 6 problems. So again, we're just looking for those key words, right? What percent? So I know percent is missing. So I'm going to set up that proportion and solve. What percent? Another percent is missing. Set up the proportion and solve. 27% of 300 is what number? This sentence is very jumbled up, but from the key words that we've been talking about, I know that the part is missing, 300 is the whole, and 27 is the percent. So I set that up, did some multiplication, and got my answer. Now on number 7, this is where our other ways that we would like to solve percents and percent problems come in handy. We have learned how to cross multiply and divide with proportions because 75 does not go into 100 evenly. It goes in 1.3333333 times. So instead of trying to find a scale factor, I am going to I'm going to multiply 75 times 60 and then divide by 100. So you can see I'm cross multiplying the two numbers I have and then dividing by that third number that's there. So when I do that, I get 45. So 60% of 75 peaches is 45 peaches. Down here, number 8, if I can find my cursor, is a whole that's missing. There we go. A whole that's missing, and this one I can set up as a proportion and solve, and I get 25, and then the last one is a percent. I'm going to set up as a proportion and solve, and I got 8%. So 8% of 25 miles is 2, and that's it, guys. That's kind of what we're learning here, is just identifying what's a percent, what's a part, what's a whole, setting up those proportions, and then solving them in any way that you know how. In our next video, we're going to take this a step further and solve some more word problems that have a little bit more context. So you'll have to do a little bit more digging to make sure you know what is your part, your percent, and your whole. Good luck.